Titanic. She was launched on May 31st, 1911. She was the largest, the grandest, the most luxurious vessel afloat. The newspapers called her the Wonder Ship and the Millionaire's Special. And her owners predicted the safest of transatlantic crossings when she left Southampton on her maiden voyage. Four days later, on April 14th, 1912, Titanic hit an iceberg and sank. More than 1,500 passengers and crew died. The unsinkable ship had disappeared beneath 2.5 miles of water, never to be seen again. Or so they thought at the time. Cape Cod, New England, one of the oldest parts of today's America, and first landfall for generations of seafarers heading west for the New World. At the southernmost tip of Cape Cod, Woods Hole, home of the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, one of the USA's leading research centers into the science of the world's oceans.
Ballard? Claude, how are you? Bonjour.
Heading the institution's deep submergence laboratory, Dr. Robert Ballard. At 44, Ballard has probably spent more time on the deep ocean seabed than any other scientist alive.
There's a pioneer in me. My family, my father was a cowboy. My grandfather was shot in a gunfight in Wichita when he was a marshal, so my great-great-uncle was Bat Masterson, a famous gunfighter. So yeah, there's a lot of cowboy in me. There's a curiousness. A scientist is just a curious individual. And I think what's really exciting is when you go down beneath the sea and you drop 2-3 hours to get to the bottom of the ocean, and you turn on the lights and you look out your windows, you're the first human being to ever see what you're seeing. And so you don't know, there's a thrill, there's an excitement about, gee, when I turn this corner, is there going to be a dinosaur waiting for me or something? And in fact, in a way, in 1977, when we discovered these exotic animals off the Galapagos Islands, it was exactly that. We entered a lost world. And there were worms that were 10, 12 feet tall, and you cut them and they bled blood like humans, and clams that were a foot across, and very bizarre animals living in this oasis. So it was very much like coming upon a lost continent. And that's pretty exciting.
Exciting it might have been, but submarines like this were never a truly efficient way of exploring the deep ocean floor.
It's very physical. You're freezing the whole time. I mean, you start out very hot, and by the time you get down the dive, your teeth are chattering. You're all bundled up. It's hard on you. Respiratory illnesses set in very easily. You know, it's harder and harder for a person as I get older and older to stand up at the end of the day. You know, your body is crunched up. It's not ideal.
And so, in 1980, Ballard began to develop an unmanned search system as part of the US Navy's Deep Ocean Research Program. Key to the system was a vehicle he called Argo. Argo carried video cameras and a sideways scanning sonar which could profile the surrounding terrain. On board Argo, he planned a small robot he called Jason. Jason would also carry a video camera and would be able to explore on its own at the end of a long tether. With Argo ready, all Ballard needed was dramatic evidence that his system worked. The Titanic, he decided, was the ideal target. The wreck lay 2.5 miles down in the North Atlantic, 400 miles south of Newfoundland, and 1,000 miles due east of Woods Hole. At that depth, there is no light. It's very cold, and the sheer weight of water exerts a pressure of more than 2 tons to the square inch. That's nearly 500 times the normal pressure at sea level. A huge technical problem for the engineers who had to design the new robotic systems. Yet the battle to replace man on the seabed went on, and the US Navy funded this new technology.
It's going to give us a continuing, improving capability for search for inspection, particularly inspection in the case of Jason, that we've been trying to develop over the years ever since we lost Thresher about 22 years ago.
The loss of the nuclear submarine Thresher in 8,000 feet of water was one of the many deep ocean problems the US Navy has been striving to solve for many years. And it was the famous White Star liner which was to put Ballard's new technology to the test. Find the Titanic, explore the wreck, bring back pictures from her interior, and the case would be made for unmanned deep ocean submersibles. In 1985, Ballard teamed up with the French and set out to find Titanic. Careful historic research had narrowed the target area to 150 square miles of the North Atlantic. The French surveyed 80% of the area and found nothing. Ballard's team lowered Argo into the water and began crisscrossing the remainder of the search area. With only 4 days left on site, one of Titanic's boilers swam into view. After exhaustive sweeps up and down the hull, Ballard's team returned to Woods Hole with more than 2,000 images of the world's most famous shipwreck. These pictures began to yield Titanic's secrets. The ship had broken in half just forward of the third funnel. The funnels themselves had gone. The remains of the stern section lay 600 meters to the south, and debris from the great liner littered the seabed in between. The personal impact on Ballard was profound.
When we came back, I wouldn't talk about the Titanic for 4 months. I just wouldn't talk about it with anybody. I just went and hid. Because it was just very hard. I don't know why. I have the foggiest notion why. Other than you felt it. You felt the disaster. You felt the loss of the life.
Summer 1986. At Woods Hole, the research vessel Atlantis II is readied for Bob Ballard's second visit to the Titanic. This year's expedition, with no French involvement, is planned as a test of the Jason part of the Argo-Jason system. Key to the dives will be the Alvin. This three-man submarine is laden with cameras. Ballard's team have fitted a special cage onto her bow, and in this cage sits Jason Jr., or JJ. JJ is Ballard's first swimming robot. It's controlled from the Alvin through a 250-foot tether, and it's built around a high-resolution video camera. To JJ will fall the honor of entering and filming Titanic, an exercise for which Ballard has adopted the term telepresence.
Real telepresence should fool you into really thinking you're there. In other words, the ultimate goal, being facetious, is if a shark swam by your vehicle, you might have a heart attack. Now you've really got telepresence worked out. It's where you've convinced yourself you're there and that you're in an imaginary submarine looking out of windows. And we'll be in that state within the next few years. Not very far off, you're going to get eyeball-sized cameras. And so Jason is a part of that technology that's exploding, of giving us telepresence, the ability to project our spirit somewhere, but leave our gallbladder and kidneys on the surface. So ultimately, Jason, we become Jason. It's our little R2-D2.
The theory sounds simple. The reality is enormously complex. In order to meet Ballard's expectations, his team must produce perfect pictures in total darkness, 2.5 miles underwater, at pressures which measure over 2 tons to the square inch. One leak, one fault, one hitch, one tiny miscalculation, and the system won't work. And the time for decisions is running out.
Look at this vertical paneling right here, see it? Mm-hmm. And then right in the middle of the wood paneling, you see that clock? Mm-hmm. And so in the next picture, when we actually look down, now this picture was taken with Angus looking straight down.
Ballard's Titanic expeditions are a very American marriage of science and show business. Some critics say they're simply a stunt, but there are serious scientific purposes behind the dives, and one of them concerns the issue of wood preservation. If and when they get there, just how much of Titanic will be left?
Well, I would guess that if you took a panel, an infected panel, a block of wood, and with a whole lot of animals in it, and put it up on one of those decks with good animals in it, that you might start a colony there.
Tuesday, July the 8th. Tomorrow, the expedition sets sail. Already, Ballard and his robot have caught the world's attention. And so today is Media Day.
We're going to go down and...
It's about a 4-day trip to the site of the sunken ship. Divers will stay down about 4 hours on each of the 12 days they are there. I'll do it, right? Honest.
100,000 still pictures is not an unreasonable number of pictures.
Would you explain something to me? I didn't quite understand. You said...
Divers will take about a 2.5 dive.
I've heard countless expeditions were going to be mounted.
It's another 2.5-hour dive to the surface of the Titanic. Divers will dive, check, bam.
It would shoot my theory that everything is safe. Now, I'm confident that...
One more time, last one, it's going to be good. If I do it right, I'm not doing it again.
But what I'm more interested in is what is that situation?
They leave tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Tim Carr, Newswatch 10, Woods Hole.
With the press gone and last-minute checks complete, only one question remains. Will Ballard be able to find Titanic again?
Oh, no problem. 2,000 satellite fixes. No sweat.
20 after 7, another expedition is setting out for the site of the sunken ocean liner Titanic today. Robert Ballard leads the team. He is senior scientist at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute in Massachusetts, and he joins us now from his ship, the Atlantis II. Hi, Robert. Good morning.
Good morning, David. How are you?
Terrific. What do you hope to accomplish this time around?
Well, I think we're going to do a much more spectacular job of bringing you the interior of the Titanic. The goal this year is to actually land on the deck with a submarine behind me, Alvin, and then send a little remote, sort of like an...
Yes, can you inform the captain that the science party is aboard and the Alvin party's aboard, so we're all set. Well, what happened was they were, boring down on their course and speed about 21 knots. The sailors in this crow's nest were the first to see the iceberg, and they radioed the bridge.
2 days out and halfway there, Ballard briefs the submarine pilots who will take Alvin and JJ to the seabed.
Everyone believes the Titanic wouldn't have sank. Had it just plowed right in, there may have been, damage, people may have been killed, but the ship probably wouldn't have sank.
A day away from the dive site, and the Alvin's cameras are prepared for the first descent. The Alvin is a very safe submarine and has recently been refitted. But the Titanic wreck site is full of hazards, and Ballard knows only too well that technology can fail.
We've had, most recently with the Challenger disaster, just that sort of being reminded of our mortality and putting too much faith in technology. We've done it all through history, and the Titanic is just one of those cornerstones, one of those peg points that pins down reality. And I don't know that if it was a lesson we should have, had to go through, or just it's one we went through.
Midnight, Saturday, July 12th. Ballard's satellite fixes have led Atlantis II directly to the wreck site. Now, he and his team must lay a network of transponders on the seabed.
Fantail, top left.
Fantail.
Begin deploying transponder.
Transponders are acoustic beacons moored to the ocean floor, which should enable the Alvin team to locate both the submarine and the wreck to within 10 meters.
We lost the transponder.
Say again.
We lost the transponder.
The first transponder is abandoned. 1,000 pounds worth of high technology floats away into the darkness. A backup transponder is readied. By 1 in the morning, everything's in place.
Well, there.
Overnight, Atlantis II inches slowly into position, directly over the wreck of Titanic. Next morning, a trace on the echo sounder tells its own story.
That's the right height, that's it. Who needed all that fancy technology? Just come out here with an echo sounder? It's very much like Cinderella going to the ball. No one person, no one organization, no one shared my dream. There was pieces of it, the technology part, the ship part, the submarine part. But no one really, had a total sharing of my dream. And so I had to go around and I had to get the shoes from somebody and the dress from somebody and the coach and the coachman. And then I knew everything. By midnight, I'd turn back into a big pumpkin. So a sense of urgency to get it done before I ran out of time.
Do I look concerned?
No, do I? Yes.
The Alvin's interior is tiny. For the next 9 hours, 3 men must share this 6-foot diameter sphere with the mass of control and video equipment so vital to the dive. It's very cramped and very far from ideal.
The hardest part of the dive.
Standing by on the fantail for course and speed. Looks good. A-frame up. Dampers unlocked. Okay, Jim. Lines up, lights out, lower away.
The Alvin team gently lower the submarine into the water. For Alvin, a veteran of expeditions all over the world, this will be dive number 1705. Alvin's descent to the seabed will take 2.5 hours. Her course is controlled from a laboratory aboard Atlantis II. Using data from the transponders already on the seabed, the Alvin control team should be able to guide the submarine directly to Titanic. That, at least, is the theory.
Roger, Ralph. We have the tracking running well, and we have a good position. The bow section should be range of about 800 meters, bearing 230 degrees. Over. Bridge, this is the top lab. Can we come about smartly and head on a due north course, please?
We're coming around to due north. Okay, Joe, let's go due north. Due north.
Alvin, repeat range and bearing to the bow, over.
Range is about 800 meters. Bearing is 045 degrees, over.
On this very first dive, things begin to go wrong. Alvin's sonar equipment fails, and the control team's computer program develops a mind of its own. Suddenly, no one seems to know exactly which course the submarine should take.
No, I mean the ship's position.
That's a half, so that's 2.25. So that's 500 meters, 1 kilometer, 1,500 meters, 2 kilometers.
Alvin, this is A2. Suggest you steer course 100 to target. Over. The suspense is killing me.
And these coordinates.
I'm going to have him come about and steer 135 and see if we go over it.
All right.
Okay.
Roger, thank you, Terry. Atlantis 2, this is the Alvin. We are at the Titanic, over.
Roger, Alvin. We understand you found the Titanic. Over.
Yeah, I think, well...
Congratulations.
Roger, we're sitting at the base. Appears to be near the tear in the stern.
Two and a half hours later, much sooner than expected, Alvin returns to the surface. Something has gone badly wrong. Ballard emerges from the submarine. On the journey back to the surface, he's been briefed on Alvin's problems. He may have found Titanic, but he's a far from happy man.
Well, it didn't go as well I'd like. We had bad problems with the submarine, so we had to abort the dive and immediately head up. So I saw it for 10 seconds. That was it. So we'll have to go back and do it tomorrow.
What happens next?
Well, they're going to be up all night. They got a sick puppy. They got to fix it, and it's going to take them all night.
During the dive, one of our 120-volt battery packs developed a ground, which one of the battery posts was shorted to the case. It's a fairly large job, and we never do it at sea. It's a fairly risky sort of thing. The battery tanks weigh about 2,500 pounds apiece. And trying to do the job on a rolling ship can cause some problems, although today happens to be fairly calm.
Ballard, meanwhile, views the first pictures from the seabed. Will telepresence work?
Oh, that is fantastic. That is the clearest I've ever seen it.
Great color.
No, if we can have that on tomorrow's dive, and if we can just, I know, but I'll take tomorrow. If we can just put the Titanic in front of that camera.
Did you see it at all? See anything?
Yeah, we were going over this hill and dale area and went up the slope and right at just a gigantic wall. It was just dark. It was incredible. It was just, for all we could see left and right, for all we could see, it was just a black wall.
Enjoy!
Monday, July 14th. Today, Martin Bowen will drive JJ, the robot. Overnight, the weather has worsened. If the seas get any higher, the dive may be aborted. Ballard's dream will once again be under threat.
That's the first actually.
Divers fuss around Alvin to make her ready to submerge. Mid-morning, and Alvin sights the ocean floor. According to the Atlantis control team, Titanic is only meters away. Ballard hits bottom. This is what he's waited for 10 years. These black and white pictures come from special light-sensitive cameras mounted beneath the Alvin. They can capture far larger sections of Titanic than the expedition's color cameras. Back on the surface, choppy seas greet Alvin. And there's yet another problem.
Are you going to cut the tether then with a hydraulic? So would you like us to cut it with cutters, or can you put some tether up? Get the vehicle floating. Get the vehicle floating now.
Pounding waves have torn JJ from its cage on the front of Alvin. Unless divers can secure the little robot, JJ may be damaged or even lost. Divers have cut the tether which connects JJ to Alvin, and the robot has been hauled aboard the rescue inflatable. Meanwhile, the mother submarine is winched aboard Atlantis II. Alvin weighs 18 tons. Retrieval under these conditions can be tricky.
You don't realize how big it is until you're there. Everything's Titanic in size. The bollards are just huge, and the chain and everything is just it's gigantic.
So many of the parts are still intact, glass. And so you'd lose dimension when you came up to the side of the hull, but as you got up to the top, you'd start being able to feel, yeah, a person could have walked there, or that's where a lifeboat could have been. It started to get more and more dimension as time went on.
It felt good that you would bring back a record that would be fascinating, but would, if anything, put an end to any thoughts of salvage. It's not salvageable. The ship is broken up, and it's buried into the bottom, and you couldn't get it out. So that's sort of nice.
We're going back tomorrow. We can fix all the things that went wrong today. We'll go back tomorrow and get this little robot out and get some real close-ups.
Trick is, let's see what it does to ground.
Ballard's team worked throughout the night to repair JJ for the next morning's dive. Meanwhile, another submersible is winched overboard. Known as Angus, this remotely operated camera platform will be towed like a sledge up and down the wreck site every night, taking thousands of still pictures, which will later be jigsawed into a mosaic of the once great liner. After the first 2 dives, the ship settles into a routine. In all, Ballard plans 12 dives, enough to give him time to film the entire wreck site.
Dampers unlocked.
Every morning at 7, the submarine rolls out. By now, Ballard and the Alvin team have located a handful of secure landing sites aboard Titanic. One of these sites is the bridge area, where there used to be a wheelhouse. 74 years later, it's gone. Only the bronze helm remains. It's JJ's job to take a closer look.
We've got a lot of dust. It's going to be we got to turn off JJ's strobe. What is that? That's the steering wheel of the ship. The center line of the ship is right over to your left. The mast is here, Martin, and the brass lamp.
Another landing site for Alvin lies on the starboard upper boat deck. Here were some of the ship's 20 lifeboats. Lifeboats which had room for barely half the liner's 2,200 passengers and crew. Still on the upper boat deck, JJ peers through the open window of a seaward-facing cabin, one of the most sought after. On the other side of the ship, JJ at last finds an opportunity to swim inside the hull. Here, first-class passengers had their own promenade deck.
Try to get in there. Without, don't go any, just go right in there. Get down the promenade. Okay, pivot. Just keep looking around. Ooh, go up and read that sign. I didn't see it. It's right up here. Right there. Go on, read that. Try not to hit the ceiling. Go straight in for it now. Something with a bunch of keys. Something. Something door for use.
This door for bridge.
Crew only. Crew only. This door for use of crew only. Pivot right. There's something that's shiny. Get out of here. Yeah, shiny rail. Let's take some pictures while we're okay, let's get out. Go out that opening right there. That's where you're.
We're running out of time.
Okay, I know we gotta get out of here. Go for your turn. Drive for your turn. Come right. Drive out. Drive out away from the ship. You're almost free. Go to your tether. You're free. You gotta hang up right there. Back your optics down. Optics down, you gotta hang up. Pivot, that's it. Don't go to the left.
Still on the port side, JJ finds one of the davits which held Titanic's lifeboats. Unlike the wooden portions of the ship, parts of the machinery have been barely affected by 74 years on the seabed.
No, these grass. Rise back up along that edge. That's it. Just keep coming in. Go down now. Okay, come over and drop down that and look at that window. That's it. Up over that edge. Okay, go and look in the window.
Here, just aft of the ship's bridge, lived the Titanic's senior officers. Only 4 survived.
Just a second, hold it.
Just the bird train.
The strobe is having trouble charging.
You won't need a strobe for this close, Bob.
Oh, well, great. Then I'm shooting everything.
Climax of Ballard's dives on Titanic was JJ's entry into a gaping hole on the upper deck between the funnels. This used to be the entrance to the ship's grand staircase and was covered with a glass dome. For years, Ballard has dreamed of JJ swimming down the grand staircase, flanked by the best of Edwardian taste and decor. Only now will he discover just how much of the ship's elegant interior has survived.
Steep drop off, and it's all, yeah, that's it.
As JJ sinks deck by deck deeper into Titanic, it becomes very clear that the interior of the ship is unrecognizable. Everything wooden has been eaten by wood-boring marine organisms. The stucco plaster and the rich carpets have long gone. Even the metal is beginning to disintegrate, producing these hanging fingers of corroded steel. Ballard christens them rusticles. Occasionally, though, as a reminder of the way she once was, Titanic produces objects like this. A light fitting, once suspended from the ceiling of the lavish first-class public rooms.
Come up, rise up, rise up. To the moon, baby.
We're dancing in the ballroom.
That's dancing in the ballroom. Oh, God, that was naughty.
We had a chandelier right on.
Hit this, you hit the cranes,
Right.
you hit the massive
Well,
stuff.
obviously I want to hit the wine balls.
With his dives on the bow section of Titanic complete, Ballard turns to the debris from the wreck which litters the seabed. Data from the nightly Angus runs have given Al Uchupi, the expedition's archivist, specific targets for Alvin and JJ.
That's way down here. You see, that will be the
ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We're going to talk to the man who's been leading the Titanic expedition.
Dr. Ballard, Peter Jennings from ABC News. You've now been down 5 times.
Have you found any sign of the passengers who were on board?
Well, I'm satisfied that we're not going to find any human remains on the ship itself, but we have yet to go down to the area of the debris field in the stern section, and that is where most of the people were when the ship sank. So we'll be going down there tomorrow, but I'm fairly confident that we won't find any remains, and we'll just have to see.
Any of these objects retrieved from the seabed would fetch a fortune at auction. But who actually owns Titanic?
The White Star Line was reimbursed. The insurance company didn't carry it on their books. They wrote it off, and we're not trying to salvage it, so we're not salvagers. So nobody does, which is sort of spooky in the sense that it was safe up until now. Is it now safe?
Few men will ever get the chance to retrieve any of these objects. One of them is Bob Ballard. Is he tempted to bring back the odd souvenir?
It's sort of like opening Pandora's box. Once you do it, it's done. Once you begin, where do you stop? I'm a collector of wines. I would love nothing better than to have a wine bottle from the Titanic, but I think I'm not going to do it. We're going to see.
The expedition found 3 safes on the seabed. This is one of them. From the debris field, Alvin heads south to Titanic's stern section. The distance between the bow and the stern has by now convinced Ballard that the ship broke up on the surface and not on impact with the seabed, as some have previously suspected. Unlike the bow, the stern is barely recognizable, twisted into grotesque shapes by the great ship's dying plunge.
Made enough dives by now to really put together a fairly clear picture of several of the controversial issues that are associated with the Titanic sinking. Certainly the one that they always refer to as the gash, the 300-foot gash in the starboard side of the ship. Well, we drove along the entire length of the bow section and only lost it or didn't see it in the very first 50 feet. What you see is a buckling of plating, a popping of rivets, creation of very small cracks where water could get in, and there is damage along a significant portion of that starboard hull, but there is not a ripped open hole.
In all, Ballard and his team have shot hours of video and thousands of stills of Titanic, enough certainly to offer a poignant new account of the great liner's final hours. April 14th, 1912. It was a clear, calm night, colder than usual, with the smell of ice in the air. At 11:39, from his perch in the crow's nest, lookout Frederick Fleet spotted an iceberg dead ahead. He telephoned the bridge. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, an officer on the bridge acknowledged his warning with a polite, "Thank you." Most passengers and crewmen were in their cabins. One of them was storekeeper Frank Prentice.
I was talking to a pal of mine. He was sitting on my bunk. All of a sudden, she came to a halt. There was no fuss. It was like putting your brakes on a car and you gradually came to a halt. And I went for it on the promenade deck. and I looked down. I couldn't see any damage at all above the waterline. But what I did see was ice in the well deck, the forward well deck. And I thought, hello, we've hit an iceberg.
At 12:05, Captain Smith ordered the ship's lifeboats to be uncovered.
The drop from the boat deck to the water was about between 70 and 80 feet. And you could hardly see the water, and people didn't want to go. They got in their minds she was unsinkable.
At 12:15, the radio operator began tapping out a distress call, the letters CQD, followed by the ship's call sign NGY. Later, he was to try the brand new distress call, SOS.
By then, the captain had ordered out lifeboats and women and children. Lower the lifeboats and stand by. That was the order. Stand by.
Some women refused to leave their husbands. Mrs. Strauss, wife of American store tycoon Isidor Strauss, told her husband, "We've been living together for many years. Wherever you go, I go." At 2:20 in the morning, the great liner tilted her stern towards the sky, broke in half, and began her final plunge towards oblivion. Then, as the ship tore herself apart inside, an unforgettable noise, impossible to describe. One survivor said, "She went down with an awful grating, like a small boat running off a shingly beach." Titanic disappeared for more than 70 years.
There's a big emptiness now that this 10 years of obsession and madness is almost done. But to me, the expedition in an overall context is really putting the Titanic legend to rest. In a sense, when we go home, it's the end of a long journey for both us and the ship as well.
Already there are men who plan further expeditions to Titanic. Perhaps some will try to raise her. But Bob Ballard's parting gesture was a plaque, left on the great liner's deck, asking that Titanic be left in peace.
It is a memorial to this period of time, to that mistake of arrogance. It's a whole bunch of things, all bundled up and now down at the bottom of the ocean, and it's a very peaceful place, very quiet place. And it's sitting upright on the bottom very nobly and at rest.